And understand, this is one of those sessions. There's really only one kind of training that's probably worse than this session. And it's called financial. It's the finance training that superintendents and CFOs have to go through every 2 years. And it lasts all day. And it's only taking y'all 2 hours. Not quite 2 hours, Sam Rayburn, don't worry. But anyway, well, I'll try to do my best to make this as enjoyable, as painless as possible. There's no way we can cover everything. So I've tried to go through and hit some highlights of some stuff. And again, we're not even going to get into deep detail. Some of you school folks that are here, if you hear me say something wrong, correct me. If you want to interject. All right? Because the reality is y'all are hitting it day to day. All right? I'm not, y'all are. So I'll try to impart, again, and this is just a Reader's Digest, surface level training tonight. You can go and get some nighttime reading if you want, the legislative briefing book, and it's about that thick, and this is my red notes about that thick. So you can help yourself to get that if you want. That wasn't me, was it? So let's dive into this thing, okay? This is my 4th year that I haven't been in I guess you call it I'm not really out of the school business, because those of you who know me know what I do for a full-time job now. So I'm still involved in education quite a bit, but this is year 37 for me, and but it's my 4th year to actually be out of the superintendency. So it's been a fast 4 years too. It's amazing how fast it goes. So your presentation number 3. All right, I've gone through, tried to tweak it a little bit and see what else we can do with that. There's just a quick outline. Again, there's going to be times I'm going to fly through this thing, so just get ready. A little bit of statistics here. Let's look at this right quick. There's some stuff I've actually added a few things that's not in your presentation. All right, so just we'll roll with it. This is some statistics I wanted to give you, just so you understand. Texas population is estimated at a little over 29 million. Approximately 5.4 million students enrolled in Texas public schools on over 8,700 campuses, 1,023 ISDs, 177 charter school districts. So that's just some statistics we have as far as public education in Texas today. And what is that breakdown as far as race? You can see it here. You can see it based on English learners, ELL, eco disadvantage, male and female. Okay? So that's the breakdown of where we are right now as far as students and in the state of Texas. I think that's an interesting statistic, isn't it, when you see that breakdown. All right, let's talk about these two men for a minute. All right, and the reason I put them up there is because it's going to be interesting to see how politics plays out and how it has an effect on us. If you follow Texas politics, you're aware that the Speaker of the House, Dennis Bonnen, and Michael Quinn Sullivan of Empire Texans they've had a falling out. Probably that'd be a nice way of putting it, right? Y'all chuckle, but it's true. Michael Quinn Sullivan and another representative met. Speaker Bonnen and another representative met with Michael Quinn Sullivan to discuss some potential, supposedly. Now this is all allegedly, because nobody's actually heard the tape in public. He secretly tape recorded this conversation, this meeting, Michael Quinn Sullivan did, and has made some accusations concerning Dennis Bonnen. He's come right out and apologized, all that kind of stuff, but now people are starting to say, hey, let's hear the tape. You're making these accusations, now let's hear the tape. The problem is there's a level of trust here that's got to take place. And Dennis Bonnen was pretty vocal against some of the things that Michael Quinn Sullivan wanted done during the session. And because of that, there's a rift. Now understand this, Michael Quinn Sullivan's one of the biggest financial backers in Texas politics today. And so because of that, there's some there's some friction, and now there's some concern in the Republican Party, and we know the Republican Party right now is in control of Texas. Coming off a pretty successful, I'm not going to say a great, but we're heading back in the right direction as far as things being done for public education. But a lot of it Michael Quinn Sullivan didn't like. So as he's throwing a wrench in some things, and we're anxious. Everybody's waiting to see what's going to play out. But it is a factor in Texas politics, and it does impact public education. So we'll watch that and see how it plays out. Now, over the last couple of weeks, we've had another thing that's popped up, and that's the rift between Dan Patrick, who's received almost $1 million of campaign contributions from Michael Quinn Sullivan in the past because of gun control and the shootings. And Dan Patrick has said, we need to do a better job with background checks on private individuals, purchasing from private individuals. Michael Quinn Sullivan has called out Dan Patrick. Dan Patrick has now called out Michael Quinn Sullivan. So now we have a rift here. So Michael Quinn Sullivan has a beef with not only the Speaker of the House, but also the President of the Senate, the Lieutenant Governor, who's probably the most powerful guy really in the state of Texas, probably more powerful than the governor, if you get right down to it. So when it comes to policy. So it's going to be interesting. Those are two dramas, for lack of a better word, as far as paying attention to what happens over the next few months and year, because it's about time to start. I was talking to our state rep the other night at a football game in Commerce, and it's about time to start making decisions whether or not people are going to run again. For that, just part of the Senate is running again, obviously, right? But the House is getting ready to start announcing all their stuff. So it's going to be interesting how this all plays out, because the Democrats feel like they're primed for the picking right now. So again, the balance of the state, it's going to be interesting to see. So I just wanted to share that little bit with you. Pay attention to it, because it does make a difference when it comes to public education. Let's look at a few statistics. A few statistics about this session. You can see that there were 1,093 bills that were tracked. Now I need to back up and say this. I want to give credit where credit's due. Buck Gilcrease, my good friend, past TASA president, who now works for Moat Casey, sent me some of his stuff he uses in his presentations. We have a group around the state of Texas that do school board writing workshops. We all work together as a group. Part of that presentation. So I've tried to take two presentations put together to try to give the best presentation with the most information as possible. So, Moat Casey, they tracked 1,093, 131 bills passed. You can see compared to the last legislative session, pretty close to the same amount, right? But it's a good idea to see when you look at the difference. That's a lot of bills, isn't it? A lot of bills when you consider that's all that was passed. So, total percentage of bills introduced compared to what was passed, and you can see there's a whole lot of stuff that happens. And a lot of folks write a lot of bills. Some get placed, some don't. And we're going to talk about some of those. Some of the major legislation, state budget, House Bill 1, House Bill 3, especially House Bill 3. There's a lot. Obviously, that's the major player. Teacher pay raise, teacher pension, Senate Bill 12, property tax reform. The homestead exemption increase did not pass. The sales tax swap, that didn't pass. Adding a penny to the sales tax to help pay for and I'll call it, they call it the tax reduction or property tax reduction. Severance tax swap didn't pass. Bond propositions, that passed. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Use of unspent bond proceeds. That right there in particular, that deals especially with charter schools. Talks about some stuff with charter schools. Ballot, what's on the ballot, voter ballot from now on. Some other things didn't pass. You can see House Bill 3906. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Some other testing things. Mental health is huge. All right, mental health is huge, and so there's a lot of things as far as that goes. School marshals' weapon carry restrictions didn't pass, but the school marshal cap did. In other words, it basically did away with the cap. Well, again, we'll talk about that more in a minute. Traumatic injury response, that passed. Lobby ban for former elected officials did not. Ban from joining advocacy groups, we'll talk about that in a minute, because that's important for school board members, all right? That's important, and don't think that hadn't died. And some people feel like that's one of the things that may cause the rift between Bonin and some of the other members in the House and Michael Quinn Sullivan. Okay? So let's dive into it. School finance. House Bill 1. House Bill 1. It funded House Bill 3 with $6.5 billion for increased school funding. TRS Care for retired folks. It added funding for that. New instructional facilities allotment, $100 million each year for that. And a safety allotment. And we'll talk more about Senate Bill 11 in a minute, but this particular allotment right here, actually at the beginning of session, was $50 a student. Now it's $9.72 a student. And really that's not a whole lot when you look at the big scheme of things. But it's better than nothing. But understand this also, is that while they're talking about new money, they also took away some monies and put them over here. So they robbed Peter to pay Paul. And when you look back at 2010 where we were when they cut it, $5.3 billion, I mean, we're still barely there. So we're still a long ways on. That's why I'm saying we're proud of what happened, but we're still not where we need to be, but it is a step in the right direction. And the way it all shook out, when we talk about House Bill 3, there are some area districts, if it wouldn't have been for the transition allotment, new name for hold harmless, which means they protect districts that lose too much money. If it wouldn't have been for that, there would have been some districts in real trouble. Melissa's a perfect example. So we'll talk about that again. We'll talk about that in a minute. So, like I said a minute ago, $67.5 billion on public education the next 2 years. The basic allotment goes from $51.40 to $61.60. So in other words, per student, that's your basic allotment. And everybody in here has now been through what you do when you have the increase of that basic allotment, right? On how you fund teachers, the percentages and all those kind of things. Everybody in here, I'm sure, has already been through all that process to try to figure out how to spend their money correctly for their teachers. And that's a good thing, by the way. That's a good thing. $5 billion for property tax relief through the compression of school district tax rates. And understand, too, the 2.5% cap right here. On the 2.5% cap, we were lucky in schools, public education, cities and counties. We're for right now, we get to fill the gap. They're going to fill the gap for us for a while, for some folks. Those cities and counties aren't, and that's not going to be good. A good example, Royce City. Their values last year in Royce City, east of Dallas, growing. Their total value, net value, increased 18%. 18% from last year. Obviously, that's a lot more than 2.5, isn't it? Okay, so they're going to get helped with that fast growth allotment in there. So it's going to be interesting how that plays out too. And I also might say that the budget, understand how it works. The state of Texas by law has to pass a balanced budget by law. So what they do is, for example, the last session, not this past one, just most recent, the 85th, and we just finished the 86th, the 85th session, they passed a balanced budget based on a projected 15% increase in revenue. So if it was going to, so the comptroller says, okay, I'm projecting, this is what's going to happen. So guess what, county tax appraisers? What do we have to do in order to make budget? Property value's got to increase. And so it trickles down. And that's what happens. It's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out, because actually with the tax compression and they're saying 4 years down the road, they're trying to get it funded for 4 years down the road, but they don't know how they're going to pay for it past that. So we could be in this, if the oil and gas industry tanks, we're going to be in the same situation we were back in 2010, 11. Let me tell you, that's not fun. That's not fun. Those were one of those times when I said that this is not what I got in the school business for, because it wasn't fun. But we survived it. School still went on. Kids still learned. Okay? TRS. I know we have some retired teachers in here. All right? So they did what they could to help fund TRS to get us back where we needed to be and to plan for the future. We'll talk about that in a minute. And it helped pay for that 13th check. More about the TRS, health insurance. And let me say this. We went from a pretty hostile leadership in Texas as far as treating teachers and educators through an election cycle. Suddenly, we were the greatest thing since peanut butter and jelly, because they heard the voters. You voted. You were heard. I think it's very, very important that we continue to stay involved politically. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but we need to stay involved politically because they heard us. So we're heading in the right direction now. And so that's just an important thing to remember. This is one of the ways they're going to, from the one-time infusion they put in it to how they're going to help keep TRS going in the years to come. And that's through contribution rates from active teachers and school districts and the state. So you can see, for example, in 1920, right here, the state's going to put in 7.5% of that check, employees 7.7%, the district 1.5%. And you can see each year how it's gradually going to go up. So they're using this along with that one-time infusion of cash to help make sure that TRS is funded. What's interesting is that, we've got some firemen in here, but Dallas and Houston fire systems, their pensions have had to go through an overhaul as well. Right? And so this has been a big deal. I know of some policemen in Dallas that aren't real happy with Dan Flynn. But, because he was, and that's my state rep, but he's the one that was kind of in the center of all that in the House to try to get all that corrected. Pension plans it's tough. That's one reason why the state wants to get out of the retirement business. They would just assume get out of the retirement business. But I think we've avoided that for a while, simply because people voted and the voice was heard. Retired teachers, let me tell you, were vocal. Very active this session, very active. But you can see that right. You can see how that goes. So again, Senate Bill 12 and the contributions, just a few details about that. And then with House Bill 1, you had $806.5 million go to help the folks on the coast with Hurricane Harvey. We're going to dive into House Bill 3 now. Any questions on House Bill 1? House Bill 3 is the nuts and bolts of our reform, okay? We'll spend most of our time on this right here. If you'll notice, I'm not going over every bill in your packet, so don't worry. We won't be doing that. But House Bill 3 on the TEA website has a House Bill 3 and 30, some great videos they're putting out there that will help us understand as we go things that are going on. Some have been released, some are still to be released. But House Bill 3 was supposed to be, as they said, simpler and easier to understand. House Bill 3 is 308 pages. It's anything but simpler and easy to understand. Again, I'm just only going to talk about the tip of it. But some of this stuff y'all are already dealing with. Again, some money figures, the impact, fiscal impact. We've already talked about all that. Some more statistics. Percentage change in FSP revenues right here, Foundation School Program. Some changes. How much did it increase? How much did it increase? Look at it as far as economically disadvantaged. All right, students or districts that had less than 10%, if they had less than 10%, they averaged a 4.34% increase in foundation school programs. You work yourself down, with obviously the top one being 90% and over, and a 9.49% increase in funding. I don't know where you fall in there. Let's look at another one. Per WADA, Understand what WADA is. WADA is your funding per ADA, average daily attendance, with the weights added onto it. In other words, if you get a little bit more for certain students that are in certain categories. So you can see the increase based on wealth per WADA. So if you're in the top 10%, well, you can see it, 8.95%, and as it goes down. It's interesting where this falls. Again, just interesting statistics. I can't explain it. That's just what they are. Enrollment size. How many students are in Irving? 33,000? But you can see where you fall. Sam Rayburn, how many are there? 540 students total. So again, all these are broken down, different categories, but you can see where the funding. And what's interesting, and one of the reasons why it's a little more here, because they did away with one of the things that hurt small schools was a small school restriction funding formula, and they did away with it. And there were certain small districts that were not getting some funding because of their size. And the reason that happened was because back a few years ago, a while back, there were some small rural representatives that did not like some of the other adjustments for mid-size and adjustments and all that kind of stuff. And so they got to get back at those representatives. They put this funding, they didn't include them in the funding formula. So it was payback. So smaller school districts lost out on some money. That's gone now. So that helped give them a little more money. Where you live, the difference. Again, there you see the rural, what I was talking about. Hence, a little more money. Independent town, it's Abilene, something like, places like that. And by region. And what's interesting on this one, as you look at that, look at Region 10 compared to everybody else. Part of that, I think, is because when you look at Region 10, some of the wealth of the school districts. That's where that hit. But you got to understand, Region 10 is huge. It's got over 60 some odd schools, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in this region. From, all sizes. In fact, there's more rural districts than urban districts. But this is interesting to see that. So let's talk about some of the makeup of funding, helping fund or what comes out of that basic allotment. How do we develop the new WADA, for lack of a better term? First one, teacher compensation. When the basic allotment increases, district must dedicate 30% of their student revenue gain compared to the prior year to compensation increases for non-administrative staff. 75% of that amount must be used for compensation increases to teachers, librarians, counselors, and nurses, prioritizing differentiated compensation for classroom teachers with more than 5 years' experience. The remaining 25% may be used as determined by the district compensation increases for full-time employees. Again, superintendents, y'all are in here. Y'all have already worked with the board. Y'all have already done this. But it's important to remember that if there's an increase from the previous year. So, for example, if we come the next legislative session and they raise the basic allotment from 60, was it 62? 60? What? I forgot. I just went blank. 6140, right? What if it goes to 7140? So that difference to your district, that's where it'll go. By law. It's state law, and that's how it'll be divvied up. Okay? More about teacher compensation. One of the things that's going to make a difference to y'all is your property values, where it's been the prior year, is now the current year. Now that's going to be tough on your financial folks. It is. But the recurring thing, when we go down into Austin and say, that's not good, it immediately says, we're not going there. That was non-negotiable to people down in Austin. It wasn't, even friendly folks to public education said, don't go there. Don't go there. That's not even negotiable. So, with that thought in mind, the state was nice, right? They're saying, okay, Well, we understand if a district underestimates its gain related to compensation increases, what remedies are available, will there be consequences? They'll work with you on that. They'll work with you. But when you're setting, you're going to be setting a tax rate after you've already started school. In the past, you set your budget, you approve it, then what do? You pass the tax rate to fund it. Your budget's already going to be set. It better be if you're going to have school and pay folks. The teacher incentive allotment. So you have your teacher pay. Now you have your teacher incentive allotment. In other words, ways to pay. And this is one of the things that if you follow the session at all, they really want merit pay. I'll call it what those of us that have been around the business, it's merit pay. All right? We that have been in the business long enough to remember merit pay know that merit pay wasn't the most positive thing in the world when it came to teaching and paying teachers. With that thought in mind, they try to come up with a compromise. And our Commissioner of Education now, he's huge on this. He is huge because Dallas ISD has implemented a program like this that they've had success. But I sat next to a very, very, very high-ranking person in their school district at a meeting the day after they had, it was the day before their TRE election they had a year ago. And that man told me to my face, if the TRE doesn't pass, we won't be able to fund this. So, it's interesting. Fortunately for them, the TRE passed. Okay? It did pass. But paying for this stuff is what's going to be the trick as we go down through the years. So we'll see. But here's what it is. It allows districts to designate teachers as master exemplary or recognized based on locally developed systems, approved by the TEA. Maxes out at $32,000 per teacher based on some factors. And I'll show those, we'll share those. It specifies that teachers that are nationally board certified may be designated as recognized. $3,000 to $9,000 again, depending on where you fall in each category. 90% of funds must be used for the compensation of teachers at the campus where the teacher earning allotment is employed. So what they're going to say is, you've earned $3,000 in this teacher incentive, and the campus as a whole has earned $100,000. $90,000 of it's got to be spent on that campus. So what they're going to try to do is keep districts from obviously getting that money and spreading it out to whoever else. That's the whole purpose behind it. Now, here's what happens. This is how it's broken down based on where a teacher falls and based on rural, non-rural, and I'll show you in a minute how that's broken down. But here's an interesting comparison. One of my good friends in the business is Doug Williams. He's superintendent at Sunnyvale. I was visiting with Doug the other day. He said, Blake, he said, they're pretty competitive with Mesquite, their neighbor, right? They've become pretty competitive financially as far as paying teachers. But here's the deal. Now with this incentive pay, Mesquite can qualify teachers. They have places that would be $32,000 incentive. The best he can do is $15,000. So guess what just happened to his teacher pay competitiveness? And these are two districts right next to each other. Now you say why? Here's why. They take certain things and put you in groups based on some things. Now, understand this. Comp Ed is no longer here. It's based on a census block group. And here's how they group you, right here. And that will determine whether or not, at the level at which you can offer incentive pay. Hence why when you know Mesquite and you know Sunnyvale, just on the median household income, and the second bullet, you have two different type of districts. So because of that, the district that has lower average household income, probably the average educational attainment is not as high. Single parent, so Mesquite will get more because their socioeconomic status is a little lower than Sunnyvale, where your average household, the average house in Sunnyvale is about $475,000. So that's why that's where that tiers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, rural, non-rural, based on these things, will determine how much you can give for incentive pay. Is that as clear as mud? Superintendents probably know it better than I do. That's the best way I know to explain that. You know, I remember when Region 10, 3 sessions ago, I think it was, Florence Shapiro was she was chairman of the Senate Ed Committee. And they were wanting to do away with service centers. And I went and testified in front of the Senate Ed Committee on behalf of Region 10 and on behalf of small districts because I was superintendent in commerce. Let me tell you, service centers are our lifeblood, isn't it? And then even the big districts to some extent in some areas, but for small school districts, folks, I'm just telling you, if it wasn't for Region 10, we'd been in a world of hurt. So it's interesting again. One of these things that it's going to be interesting to see again how that plays out and how the paying for it comes in the future. Again, remember, they've got this funded for 4 years. 4. We'll see what happens after that. Anyway, Moat Casey hasn't. If you're a member of Moat Casey, you can get that. But that's just a way. It's an interactive map you can get to get it. All right. Some other allotments. Weighted ways to fund. Special ed increases mainstream special ed weight to 1.15. Dyslexia, a new allotment. Again, we've taken away the high school allotment. We've taken away some others and reconfigured. All right. So dyslexia, you have that. Again, a lot more students being diagnosed as dyslexic today. CTE funding. Prior to this session, you could only get funded CTE courses in high school. Now you can get them down in the middle school. And so what's going to happen, a lot of FFA programs, Cole, will start offering Ag 101, 102 in junior high and middle school. So that'll open up those students that want to be ag students. This is just one example. At the high school level. We did that in Kaufman when I was assistant superintendent in Kaufman back in 2006. We didn't get paid for it, but we offered it. And we felt like it had helped those students that wanted to get into ag and pursue, because we had there was a good ag program there at the time, and a lot of students wanted to be in ag. So we started offering. We didn't get funded for it, but we did it anyway. But now you can get funded for it. Bilingual ed creates additional dual language weights. That's interesting when you read that. I've got a son that's a kindergarten, started this year in Sulphur Springs, and he's actually going to be, he's not going to be, he is, in a class that is a dual language class, half the days in English, half the days in Spanish. So he's taking half the day doing his English stuff and half the day he's doing Spanish. So he's learning both, while the Spanish-speaking students are learning English. So he's actually in there in that class. And so every time we sing, we say, what'd you learn new? Hablo español? But you get weighted funding for that now, so it justifies doing it. Okay? Full day pre-K must be provided. But look at the second bullet. We currently in education get funded for half a day pre-K. So you have to offer pre-K. Now they'll allow, if you show you don't have the space, they'll give you a waiver for a few years, right? But are they paying you? Are they paying us for a full day? What do they call that, Cole? What do they call that? Unfunded mandates? Okay. Creates a new early education allotment for K through 3 students that is educational disadvantage or LEP and enrolled in bilingual programs. Students in both categories count twice. That's interesting. Funds must be spent on improving reading and math performance in pre-K through 3rd grade. Before district builds or releases a facility for pre-K, it must solicit proposals for partnerships with community-based child care providers. So in other words, if you don't have the space before building one, you need to go find a preschool or a daycare there in your district and partner with them. GT. Districts must certify they have a GT program that meets certain requirements. He may reduce entitlement for non-compliant districts. Okay? So you need to have some money set aside for GT program. The high school allotment as we know it has been repealed. It's no longer around. Other new allotments. Fast growth allotment. Look at that. In top quartile of growth rates over the preceding 3 years. So those that might be fast growth. That's how they'll determine fast growth. A new mentor program allotment and a dropout recovery school and residential placement facility allotment. Reimbursements. 1 free college and 1 free industry entrance exam per student before they graduate. Some districts are already doing that. Some districts have been doing that, some not. But now that's going to be included. New instructional facilities allotment. Then you have your transportation allotment. It's $1 per student there for regular eligible and includes homeless students. Includes homeless students. Expand CTE reimbursement to include transportation to work-based learning. So if you have, for example, the nursing program in your school and a student needs to get bused to a hospital or a nursing home or somewhere to get some of their training, some of their hours, then you can get reimbursed for taking those students. In Commerce, Texas, we have a consortium where we offer welding and plumbing, and electrical in area school districts come to Commerce. And so now what can happen is they can provide transportation to those students and actually get reimbursed for that. Same thing with a little, they call it Pride Prep. It's a modified early college high school where students apply for it. Again, they can help. All that helps. So, all right. Creates new outcomes based on the percentage of graduates that are college, career, and military rail. We'll talk about that in a minute. Well, let me just go ahead and go to it. Based on this formula, for lack of a better, you rank order all districts based on the percent of grads demonstrating CCMR, create 3 separate rankings for 3 student subgroups that are right here. These are the 3 subgroups. So what they'll do is they take these tests, see how these students rank them in your district, and if your district falls within the top 75 percentile, then you can get extra money for students that exceed. Got that? Again, it's another way to try to get money for students that are successful on an outcome-based test. At least it's not third grades like they're proposing. We're not going to fund schools based on what third graders do on a reading test. It was already at a 5th grade level, right? We talked about that. That's about when we talked about that. But anyway, so that's interesting. Look at that bottom bullet. TEA has stated that every special ed student that graduates CCMR will receive an allotment. So it's ways for you to get money for your students in your district based on a test. Summer school for your little kiddos especially, right here. Half-day ADA funding for up to an additional 30 days of instruction. Help pay for summer school for pre-K through 5th grade. That won't be effective for another year. These instructional days are not subject to compulsory attendance for those students in summer school. All right. And then the CURT and prior year values. We talked about that. All right, any questions on some of this funding formula and how that goes? And like I said a minute ago, these Chapter 41 schools are now 49 schools. They're called Chapter 49s. And what that's going to mean is that if there's a gap from that 2.5% based on the amount of income they would have gotten based on that those appraisal values and that difference in funding between those 2 areas, they're going to actually fund what we used to call hold harmless, but they're going to fund that difference. but they're going to reduce it 20% over the next 5 years. So you have 5 years as a district to figure it out. So it doesn't get you all at once. And for some districts, those that are 41, we're 41, now 49. Now some of those districts aren't as numerous because they've reduced the number of districts that are paying in to what we called Robin Hood. But still, they're going to make sure those people, cities and counties, don't get this. School districts do. So while we're griping about the fact that we're going to do away with have less money over 5 years, the reality is they were kinder to ISDs and to public education than they were to cities and counties. All right, so let's look at it. Everybody in here knows you have $1.17 max of M&O, right? 50 cents is your max on INS. So that's $1.67 max rate that you can have for public education. And we all know that the highest bill on that tax statement comes from where? From the school districts. So they see that. We've done property tax reduction. All right, that's what they're calling it, or compression. So there you are, you're $1.17. You take the dollar and it's now compressed down to 93 cents. You have your 6 cents in golden pennies, but you're getting 2 additional pennies that were what we call the copper pennies going up 2 golden pennies. And I know that's not all school people know what I'm talking about. But just understand this. They're trying to help us out a little bit here. But here's the kicker right there. And I know that what it means is that for a $1.17 district in 1819, a tax rate of 1.0684 would be above the voter approval rate. So it's got to be rounded down. All right? If you have a tax rate for $1.17, if you're down, if it's not 1.0683, if it's higher than that, then you're out of compliance. Bottom line. And you got to be there for a year. And law will not allow you to do a TRE for a year. Unless you can prove that you had a strategic plan that stated that you were going to go out for a TRE prior to this law being passed. There's one district in the state that's had that. They're the ones that got the Sunnyvale Amendment passed. Again, my good friends there. But when they saw this, knowing how it was going to hit them, they went down and talked to the speaker, talked to the lieutenant governor, and said, hey, look, we've already made plans to do this because this is how it's going to affect us. I mean, prior to this New Deal, they couldn't do a TRE originally because 70 cents on the dollar was going to go to the state. So that, I mean, why would you do a TRE based on the Robin Hood? So now they could do it, but they were going to get killed financially. So they said, hey, hold on, before you pass anything, look at this. So they had an amendment added, and it passed, and it's called the Sunnyvale Amendment. So they are actually having a TRE in November. Okay? But their tax rate's not going to go up the way it's falling. So it's just interesting. You know, they don't call them tax swaps anymore. What do they call them? I don't know. There's some terminology in there. So it's just an interesting way of seeing how that all works. All right. So that's House Bill 1, House Bill 3. Any questions? All right. I got a question for you. We're going to speed through the next half. You want to stop, get a break, or do you just want to roll? All right, we're going to roll. Here we go. Get ready to keep up. And I'm going to apologize. I'll be reading some, okay, here in these next parts. But it's the best way to me to get across what I want to get across. You're going to see certain bills up here and on yours that underline or italicized, those are the ones I'm going to discuss. If they're not, you can read those tonight when you go home. All right? That's a joke. Y'all are supposed to. Okay. So let's look at this one. Let's look at a few bills, though, in school safety. I underline some things, just to me, the emphasis. For example, House Bill 18, mental health, training for public school students. And again, students are included in some of this. Mental health for certain school districts. Cardiac assessments. Look at this one. This is an interesting one right here. Bleeding control kits on your campus. In other words, you have to have on your campus, you know how you have the AEDs? Now you have to have blood control kits. And you have to go through, teachers and students have to go through training every year. And it's wound compaction. I can't believe I'm talking about this. But you've got to train students that if another student's been shot, what do you do? How do you pack the wound? How do you do the tourniquet? That's all required training now for students and teachers on the public school campus. And you have to have these kits around your campus as well to help with that. Okay? Provide professional development training for suicide prevention and grief-informed and trauma-informed care to appropriate personnel. Non-compliance. Well, let's see. Let me read some more stuff here. Each district must appoint a threat assessment team and safe and supportive school team at each campus to assess threats and implement safe and supportive school programs to be developed by TEA and TSSC. Teams must report to superintendents any person that poses a serious risk of violence to themselves or others. This isn't on your stuff. All right. Superintendents must immediately attempt to notify the parents. So again, a multi-hazard emergency operations plan. Just another plan we have to have in schools. Classroom access to direct communications with various emergency personnel and districts. Communication infrastructure must be adequate during an emergency. That teacher has to have the ability to have immediate contact with district emergency personnel. Now, what does that look like? Is it a phone? Could be. Is it an app? Well, if a teacher's worth their salt, they won't have that phone on them when they're teaching, right? So if something happens in their classroom, they're going to go start trying to get into their phone. And that's lost time, right? So, and I know there is one product that I know of that's come out that's part of the hotel industry's used it for their ladies that clean the rooms. Because apparently they were being assaulted. And so it's a lanyard and you just push a button. You see some of it for senior care people. When they fall, they just push a button. Same concept. So there's all kinds of ways for that to be taken care of. Okay? A chain of command that designates the individual responsible for making final decisions during a disaster emergency situation and alternates if designated person is available. When the 911 people show up, who's in charge? You got to know. Everybody knows who's in charge of that campus, along with your campus map and everything else that goes with that. So, it's all part of safety of students. All right, Cole Hefner, 1143. The bill prohibits school districts and open enrollment charter schools from regulating a manner in which a handgun, firearm, or ammunition is stored in a private school. How many of y'all are around back in the day when you used to go to school and we have our rifles up in our gun rack in the back of the pickup truck? Well, they did away with that, didn't they? Well, now it's back. They're saying you're okay. All right? They're saying you can have that firearm in that vehicle on campus. In the vehicle, yes. Oh, yeah, in the vehicle. No, they can't. No. Students can't have them in the building. or outside the vehicle. Okay? Pardon me? Well, no, technically you don't have to have a license to carry it in a vehicle.
So it says by handgun license holder.
Oh, no, I thought you were talking about, oh, no, yes. I thought you were talking about something else. I thought you went, no, people can carry a handgun in their vehicle without a license. Yeah, they can. That's what I thought you were, referring to. Yes. Okay. 1387. Bill removes a previous student to school marshal ratio and per campus cap on the number of school marshals a school district, open enrollment charter school, or private school could appoint. So in other words, in the past you had a ratio, but now that's gone. So as long as you can have as many staff on your campus, as long as they do the training and pass all the background check, do everything they have to do, properly trained, you can have as many school marshals now on your campus as if you approve it, the school marshal plan. If you approve the school marshal plan. Okay? 2195. The bill requires the school district to include in its multi-hazard emergency operations plan a policy for responding to an active shooter emergency. Authorizes the school district to use any available community resources in developing the policy described in this subsection. Has anybody seen that commercial? They've kind of had the commercial of the active and the different things of students, and it shows the girl that's sitting up texting her mom saying, "I love you." I mean, it's a heart tugger. Boy, at the same time, it really bugs me that they're painting public schools in that light, But anyway, but again, you got to have that plan. All right, next, Senate Bill 820. The bill adds a requirement that every school district adopt a cybersecurity policy to secure district cyber infrastructure against attacks and determine current risk levels to implement mitigation planning. Additionally, the bill, through an appointed cybersecurity coordinator in each district, requires any attack or cybersecurity incident be reported to TEA and parents' guardians. Okay. Discipline. House Bill 692. The bill prohibits schools from placing homeless students in out-of-school suspension. Constructive alternatives are encouraged by these students. Don't kick homeless students out of school. Bottom line. And let me remind you of this. Bills normally that are passed, the laws are made, are reactive, not proactive. So in other words, what's happened, something's happened, and so with that thought in mind, we pass a bill because there were homeless students being suspended out of school, and they didn't have anywhere to go. They were homeless. And the support system was gone, right? They had no support system, basically. So, figure out a way to discipline, especially those that are homeless. Also, in 811, this bill requires the school district to take into effect whether a child is under the conservatorship of the state or is considered homeless and decisions made regarding disciplinary decisions. Again, let's look at the personal situation of that student when we're carrying out disciplinary actions. 3630, House Bill. Identical to Senate Bill 712 by Eddie Lucio, provides this guidance by listing, now listen to this, extreme aversive interventions that may not be used on any student under any circumstances. Importantly, the bill also directs the Commissioner of Education to develop guidance that will help educators to avoid the use of these dangerous interventions and develop in their stead positive interventions that will help redirect behavior without causing unnecessary and harmful trauma to students. So in other words, we'll find out what's considered aversive interventions. Because what one person might consider aversive, another one might not. So we're going to have to we'll need to get some guidance by TEA on that. And I'm not asking for an answer to this question, but to some people, busting them with the board's aversive. To some districts, that's not. They still do it. That's an example, right? So, we'll see. Senate Bill 1306. Bill requires districts to post the contact information of the campus behavior coordinator. Whoever handles the discipline on that campus must be listed on the website. That's what that means. Senate Bill 1451. This bill prohibits disciplinary or negative evaluations for teachers who submit any number of discipline referrals. In other words, that teacher, I'm just telling you this, and y'all may have heard this, this teacher can't handle her classroom, so she sends students all the time to the office. She can't handle the discipline in her classroom. Right? Well, according to this bill, you can't do anything to that teacher. That's what it means. Senate Bill 2432. The bill extends the requirement for removal to a DAP to a student who commits certain harassment offenses against a district employee. So, if that student, threatens a teacher or does anything that teacher feels threatened, the student can go to DAP. Which is get a little more teeth into it. Senate Bill 1451 or 165. Where am I? Okay, I've lost my. Oh, next slide. Here we go. Yeah, there we go. House Bill 165. Bill creates a path for students within the special ed program to earn an endorsement for their high school diploma. Senate Bill 2075. Bill gives TEA rulemaking authority to ensure school district compliance with dyslexia and related disorders notification of a program through the Texas State Archives Commission to give students at risk of dyslexia and similar reading issues free of charge audiobook rentals. You'll get that? So again, if a student is at risk or with dyslexia or any kind of related disorder when it comes to reading, they can rent books free. Okay? A good thing. A good thing. House Bill 3650. In an effort to reduce the cost to a student taking a dual credit course, school districts and institutions of higher ed must consider the use of free or low-cost open educational resources in their offered courses. In other words, if you're taking that dual credit course, most of us pay for it, or it's pretty inexpensive when you do it through a community college or a university. But that $200 textbook, we need to figure out a way not to make that happen. Okay, that's what they're saying. Next. 1276, Senate Bill 1276. In an attempt to ensure students are receiving accurate information regarding their high school endorsement and dual credit options, the bill clarifies necessary elements of a memorandum of understanding to create a dual credit program at a school district. I can't imagine, almost every district now has a dual credit program. It's just making sure everybody's on the same page and how it's going to be offered and what's going to be done. I use this example. You're hearing, if you follow college athletics, especially right now college football, you've got college athletes that are graduating 2 years into college and transferring to another school if they're not playing or whatever. And the reason why, because all these students are taking dual credit courses in high school. Now, that's a dual-edged sword. Because some students can graduate from high school with an associate's degree 2 years into a college program. They may not be ready to declare a major their first year into college. Or they may not even be sociologically and emotionally ready for college. And they're already in classrooms with, juniors and seniors and upper level courses. So that's a dual-edged sword. But with the high cost of college education, let me tell you, parents, y'all may pay for them in your district. We did. And let me tell you one reason we did, because I got tired of hearing students saying they can't afford to go to college. We were going to break that cycle. And so the more hours we could get them, then they were more likely to go to college and break that cycle of not going there. Or an endorsement or a certification if they wanted to be a plumber or an electrician or a certified nurse's aide or whatever it might be in order to get a head jump on getting that BSA, right? So there's all kinds of reasons that are positive. And I think the positive outweigh the negatives. All right, what's next, y'all? I've already lost my... 1374, thank you. Bill allows school districts to currently enroll a student in Algebra 1 and Geometry. And here's why that's important. A student takes Algebra 1 in 9th grade and doesn't pass it. They need to be able to take Algebra 1 again as a sophomore and take Geometry in order to get some of those higher level math courses. And who knows why they don't pass Algebra 1? We're not passing judgment on a student because they don't pass Algebra 1. But if they got to wait to take Geometry 2 after Algebra 1, then that sets them behind. So that's why that bill was passed. Again, remember, bills are reactive, right? Some school districts are already allowed in certain situations, if they knew the student, they would allow them to do that. I mean, I had one high school student, as a freshman, took Algebra 1 and Geometry 1 that we allowed. But she was very bright, sharp young lady. House Bill 1026, the bill requires the State Board of Education to integrate positive character traits into the essential knowledge and skills for grades K through 12. So we're going to add into our curriculum a positive character trait program. Okay? I thought it always happened anyway. But again, we're legislating it now, right? Now we have to do it. Now understand too, for example, when it comes to U.S. history, I believe, and I'm understanding there's over 200 TEKs that you're supposed to teach in 187 class days. So we're going to add some more. But anyway, we'll get it done. Teachers can do it. House Bill 330. Now, if you look, see, I want to make sure, because this is where there were some mess ups. Does that show on yours? And I had to go back and correct. Yeah, they're good. Okay. House Bill 330. At one point in time, if you had a student, and again, God forbid this happens, but if it did happen, if you had a student die in high school, they were considered a dropout in your calculations. Okay? So, again, I say so too much. I'm sorry, that's not bad. That's bad public speaking. But now, certain students from dropping completion rates for the purpose of public school accountability. This is students who are unable to attend school due to a condition, injury, or illness that requires substantial medical care. Okay? Substantial medical care. House Bill 2210 by Keith Bell excludes certain students receiving residential services in a state hospital from consideration of the local school district accountability calculations. Keith Bell, former school board member in Forney, is now a state rep. This bill is specifically for Terrell, the state hospital in Terrell, the mental hospital there, because they were responsible for those students, and it went on their accountability. I give this personal experience. When I was assistant superintendent in Kaufman, there was a young man that was a 17-year-old who was arrested for murder. And by law, he had to be asked if he wanted to receive educational services. He said yes. So I went over with one of our special ed ladies. We walked into that little room with that class. In walked that student in his orange jumpsuit with his chains on, his wrist tied to his belt, to his ankles. And I had to pass a pen through to him. And he signed his papers saying that he wanted educational services. At that point, guess who he became property of? Kaufman ISD. So now, there's situations that's not held against school districts. So again, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I'll never forget that day as long as I live. Yeah, I was a little uneasy. I was. House Bill 3906. Student assessment. Student assessment. There's several things here you got to do based on House Bill 3906 by the chairman of the House Ed Committee. He did this, Huberty. Commissioner must appoint a technical advisory committee to advise on the development of valid and reliable tests and appoint an educator advisory committee to advise on the development, get this, of academically appropriate tests. Where is that coming from? That third grade test, reading test. Yes. Well, it's not yet. In fact, yes, right. It's not done yet.
And the commissioner said we need more time.
Yes. Correct. TEA and SBOE, State Board of Education, must develop a transition plan, listen to this, to administer all assessments electronically beginning no later than the 22-23 school year. All assessments will be done electronically. Now, this year, tests were done electronically. What happened? They got lost. They went to cyberspace. Yeah. So, anyway, it's going to be interesting how that plays out. All right, so that's going to be something that they're going to be wanting done. Let's see. A pilot program for integrated formative assessments, determination of the feasibility of their use in replacing STAR tests. Again, just a few other things. Prohibits the use of a state-required kindergarten assessment other than to determine whether a student is entitled to benefit from the foundation school program. Again, why would we test kindergartners? But in a punitive way. But anyway. Prohibits pre-K assessment. Removes standalone 4th and 7th grade writing test effective in 2021. Allows the State Board of Education to adopt rules designating sections of STAR 3rd through 8th grade math tests that may be completed with the aid of technology and must be completed with the aid of technology. Anyway, there's just more and more testing. How are we going to do testing? From allowing them to have a graphing calculator or something on a device that can do math, that would take the place of a graphing calculator. All kinds of things are happening in testing. I really believe, talking to some of and one of the bills that did not pass was only testing what's tested at the federal level and taking away all the other tests. Some people I've talked to think that's going to catch steam for next session. And we'll see how that happens. Now, if you look at this right here on your handout, there's some screw up on Senate bill and House bill numbers. But this particular, I think, is important for the board to know. Again, I'll just try to do this in a nutshell. Bottom line, anybody going to do a bond anytime soon? So you're doing one this November. So you've experienced this. How you're going to list out everything on that bond that's going to be voted on. You've got to put out everything that's going to be what you're doing with the estimated cost of what that's going to be. So now it's not anymore, it's Proposition 1, just high school renovations. What are you going to do within that high school renovation? Okay? So again, it's a transparency issue. So that's some of the things now that they're wanting on these bond referendums. Okay? Senate Bill 1454. This bill outlines the process by which the real property, and I think this is big here, and assets of a closed charter will be transferred or disposed of. All remaining funds, except as provided through this bill, of the charter holder that ceases to operate must be returned to the Texas Education Agency and deposited in the Charter School Liquidation Fund. TEA has the ability to transfer remaining funds to another charter holder or related party. So what had been happening, again, reactive, right? Charter schools would fold, they would liquidate everything, and what would happen to that money? So now the state is saying that's got to go back into an account, pay off all the bills, and what's left over, TEA is going to do with what they want to do with it. Okay? So that's what they're saying. It's, again, a reactive bill based on things that have been taking place. Senate Bill 1230 by Paul Betancourt. The bill establishes, now listen to this. Again, I think it's important with all that we know is going on. The bill establishes a reporting requirements for private school employees after conviction and deferred adjudication is granted. The bill makes private school employees compliant with similar requirements for public school employees. Does require school districts and open enrollment charter schools to report evaluation information to the TEA in the event the agency is conducting an investigation. So this is part of what I do. I talk about positive things happening in public education. But one of my slides, and y'all have seen it, one of my slides is a picture of Abraham Lincoln, and the caption right next to it says, "What kills the skunk is the publicity it gives itself." And sometimes we in public education are our own worst enemy. And one of the things that's been about is because of improper type relationships. So, with that thought in mind, our folks get in trouble. Well, what's happened, private school folks, all right, will get in trouble. Do we ever hear anything about it? So they go to public schools and get hired. Public schools don't know anything about it. So what happens? Now, there's a bill that says if a private schools have to report to TEA any improper or any private school employee that gets in trouble, so that everybody knows. Interesting, isn't it? Because before, private schools were kind of over here by themselves. So, interesting. Okay? 2073. The bill allows a school district that has reduced the number of days of instruction for students to reduce the number of days a teacher is required to report to school proportionately. We have 2 school districts in the state of Texas that are on 4-day school weeks. I forgot the one in West Texas and Athens ISD. So obviously they have fewer student days. So whatever proportion. Now, again, interesting, schools go by minutes, don't they? Now, y'all know how that bill got passed? There was a school in the Panhandle who, because of weather, couldn't let out of school to go watch their football team in the state championship. So that particular senator of that area got a bill passed to go to minutes instead of days, so that in case of minutes, they can just add on if you just add on the minutes to still get the instructional time in instead of days. That's how that all came about. True story. So, with that thought in mind, we still hire teachers by days. 187 days, standard teacher contract. All right? Some are 197, 206, whatever. So, with that thought in mind, if you're only going 4-day school week, obviously the students are in school fewer days, so the teachers proportionally will have fewer days, but not be penalized pay-wise. They won't be penalized pay-wise. Because technically, they're still in school teaching, right? The same number of minutes. Okay. Questions on that? We're getting close, y'all. We're sniffing it. Senate Bill 12, we talked about the TRS, the 13th check. House Bill 111 by Mary Gonzalez. The bill's author and sponsor have shown that persons with disabilities are victimized at much higher rates than those without disabilities and are much less likely to report abuse. Students, listen to this, with significant cognitive disabilities are particularly vulnerable. This bill provides for training on identifying and preventing maltreatment and abuse of students with severe cognitive disabilities and will equip schools with necessary tools to help decrease the amount of child abuse and neglect that occurs in Texas. So our severely handicapped students, again, are more likely to be abused. And so we're going to have training to help identify that because it happens. Statistics show they're more likely to have it happen. Governance. Now, board, y'all ready for this? This is just for y'all. And superintendents. The bill amends current law relating to investment training. Y'all are going to like this, superintendents. This legislation exempts these financial officers from attending investment training every other year if the district does not invest district funds or only deposits those funds in interest-bearing deposit accounts or in authorized certificates of deposit. So depending on where you put your savings, which, I mean, CDs aren't exactly paying a ton of money right now anyway. It's not like you're making a lot of money on investments. But if it's in CDs or other interest-bearing accounts, you don't have to do your investment training now every 2 years. Now, if it's in some other funds you do, you got to see where it is. Okay? Check with your finance guy on that. That's what that says. Y'all are looking at me funny. Okay, we'll let you go to finance training. But no. Y'all, you think this is boring? Go to finance training for a day. All right. House Bill 403. The bill adds training requirements for a member of the Board of Trustees for a school district, Board of Trustees for a school district, and superintendents regarding sexual abuse, human trafficking, and other maltreatment of children. Every member of a school district's Board of Trustees must complete every 2 years a 1-hour training on identifying and reporting potential victims of sexual abuse, human trafficking, and other maltreatment of children. This training will be research-based and completed, listen to this, within the first 120 days of appointment or election of the member. It's my understanding it's going to be an online training. Right? It's my understanding it'll be online. Just be aware of that. And let me tell you, of course, my job that I have requires social media presence. But y'all, it's scary the number of kids that you're seeing now are missing. Seems like every day or two there's somebody else. And it's scary. Child sex trafficking is bad. It's bad. It scares me for my 5 grandkids and 6 when it's on the way. It doesn't say. I'm assuming it's going to be with the next election cycle. Because it's going to say 120 days. All right. House Bill 2840. In order to help provide the most accessible public comment, governing bodies will now provide public comment before or during the consideration of each item of their agenda or open meeting. Now, I've had people, and I've talked to several people, because when you read that, it's saying every action item you're supposed to have public comment. But what I've been getting, and what I've been told school attorneys are saying, you keep your open comments or your public comments at the beginning of the meeting, and then you have your public comment at the beginning of action items. Then, and you set the rules. Okay? But then after that time, then you vote on your action items. Okay? So that's what I've gotten from interpretation of that with some school attorneys. 2 public comments. Yeah, one at the beginning of the meeting, before consent agenda, or whenever you do it. You have two. You have two. Consent agenda, or one at the beginning, and one before action items. Check with your school attorney. That's just what I've been told. So you have to have an extra comment. Let's see. Where are we? 2283. This bill prevents individuals. All right. All right. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands here. This bill prevents individuals who had been convicted or pled guilty or no contest to a felony from serving on the school board. Currently, school board trustees who are convicted of or who have pled guilty or no contest to a felony still are allowed to serve out their term. So if you've committed a felony, you can serve out your term and then you can't do it anymore.
You have to be convicted, right?
Or pled guilty. Yeah, convicted. Yeah, that's true. But anyway. All right. But that's new. House Bill 234. The bill prohibits cities, counties, or local public health authorities from adopting a policy that prohibits or regulates a child's ability to sell non-alcoholic beverages from a stand. That's called the lemonade bill. There was a HOA that would not let a little kid sell lemonade from a lemonade stand because it was against the HOA rules. And I believe it was a fundraiser for a special cause. So we've got to pass a law to get that done. Okay. I'm being told, hurry, we got to get done. All right, quickly. 621, bill prohibits adverse employment action against an employee who in good faith reports child abuse or neglect. Again, reactive, right? Probably they reported it against the wrong person. Right? 1597, the bill establishes a way for active military families to enroll students in a new location with military orders rather than having to wait to establish typical residency stuff. Again, a good bill. And also I might say this. If you have a person's property, continuous property that's in two separate school districts, y'all have any of that? All right? So if the property is in two separate school districts, in the past it's been where the dwelling was, now that person can have the choice. But it's got to be continuous dwelling or continuous property. Okay? You see that more out in the rural areas than you do. Establishing a celebrating Texas Girls STEM Day on March the 1st. Okay? Which is a good thing. Holocaust Remembrance Week in public schools. That's to be determined what week that will be. And just a few things, we'll finish up with this. Bills that didn't pass, composition of Combated Sports Advisory Board. Egg grading didn't pass. Regulation of raising or keeping 6 or fewer chickens by a political subdivision. Relating to operating a motor vehicle while a person is occupying the trunk of the motor vehicle. Tell you what, that's how we got into drive-in movies when I was a kid. But anyway. This is important right here, y'all. Ban taxpayer-funded lobbyists such as those representing TASA, TASB, Texas. They are after your legislative representation. They're after ours in TASA, PTA. They're after that. That's going to be a fight next session, guarantee you. Limited the amount of severance pay a school board could pay to a superintendent, y'all. All right? Some people are wanting it to be all that's left of that year of that contract. But if you stop and think about that, that makes that superintendent an at-will employee. That's not good. Okay? That's not good. Of course, I'm a biased view. But that, to me, you need to be able to know that I've been hired to do a job. Give me some time to do it. Okay? But y'all know as well as I do, board members, a superintendent, what we say, we're one election from not having a job. They need some stability too, right? Okay. Provided school district funding based on standardized test scores of third grade students. Didn't pass. Thank goodness. Limited flexibility and determination of school start date. People like not starting before the fourth Monday in August, right? When you do that, I'm telling you, it is hard to get everything done to have a good break at Christmas. So you can have 2 separate semesters with more equal days of instruction. Elementary teachers are the ones that really struggle with this. Okay? Because and even more so than secondary teachers. Just a few other things you can see. These did not pass. I think that I taught economics. Personal financial literacy can be part of economics. But you're talking about taking a whole half a school year out just for personal financial literacy. That's one more thing we've got to have. So anyway. That's it. What comes next? Rulemaking. That's what's going to happen. There's a process that's in your handout. This is what goes on over the next 2 years before the next session. We're going to find out what the intent is of some of these laws. The TEA might say this is what we're ruling, and we find out it's not the intent of the law. So there's going to be a lot of rulemaking. This is how it's going to be carried out, the law. You'll get it through board policy updates every month. Get ready for them. You'll have them the next several months. Because as law is interpreted, it'll go into policy, and you'll have the opportunity to do what you need to do on a local level or the legal level as well. By law, it says how you have to present sex education in schools. So right now, that's what you go by. You can't change it until the next session. Hey, folks, thank you. I appreciate it. Y'all have a great rest of the week and weekend. Bye. You bet.